Ooh, the freshie of all freshies.
Sedley. That's the fragrance of the day because it's going to be very hot. I need something fresh. Let's go for a ride, homies. Alright everybody, good morning. My name is Josh. This is Rides and Reflections. That's a loud truck. As the name suggests, we go for motorcycle rides and we reflect on stuff. And so far the channel's been pretty autobiographical, and I'm sorry for that. I'm trying to strike the balance between making it engaging for others and being truly an authentic public journal of sorts. I find it very therapeutic to reflect on my life, previous chapters, what's happening, what's going to happen, and I create meaning by doing that. You're with me on my way to work again through Columbus, Indiana, Brown County, Nashville, Bloomington. And I checked the radar yesterday. I did not see what I see ahead. So I don't know if I'm going to make it. I do know today is going to be a scorcher. Heat index high 90s here in south central Indiana with very high humidity. And I'm on a job where I work outside with no air conditioner. Crimea River. Speaking of river, anybody know which river this is? Try to get you a good view here without plunging into it. That's I think it's the White River, East Fork. Anyhow, what do we talk about today? I honestly don't know. It just comes to me most of the time. The autobiographical stuff about my scooter and motorcycles and my crash, you can check out those videos. Those have been easy because I've got that stuff recorded in my small brain for a long time. But I also like philosophy and psychology and stuff like that. So I thought I might talk about... I don't like that. I think it's okay though. Famous last words. I might talk about Soren Kierkegaard's philosophy, at least some of the things that I find meaningful. I really think it's cool. This is kind of a Nietzschean observation or Nietzschean practice, is to don't try to make a guru out of somebody and be a carbon copy of them, and you don't even have to be interested in trying to master every jot and tittle they taught and wrote about. So use what's useful from a philosopher. Understand that portion. If something's not useful to your life at that time, no big deal. It's really about life affirmation and studying these things as a utility. In fact, Guy Deleuze, I don't know how to pronounce that French name. He wrote a book called Nietzsche and Philosophy where, he gives his own spin or interpretation on Nietzsche, and some people criticize him because he's talking about, active and reactive forces and negative and positive energy and difference and sameness and what? Is that Nietzsche? But the thing about Deleuze is he was being a good Nietzschean and using Nietzsche for what he found useful to his life. And he had some good things to say about Nietzsche too. maybe another episode. Kierkegaard's known as the father of existentialism. You know, before him, all the philosophers were about rationality and empiricism. Which is the real? How do we really know anything? Is it through our logic and our reason and our rational mind? Is it through experience? Is it through measuring empirical data, rather? Hegel was a very popular German philosopher. He was an idealist who thought that the world was mind, it was ideas. Hegel said the real is the rational and the rational is the real. And Kierkegaard said that, what about experience? What about action and decisiveness and actual living? That's something that you can't even think. How do you think experience? Kierkegaard said that. How do you think experience? You have to live it. And how do you live it? Well, you don't live it through, and this may be controversial, but you got to hear him out. You don't live it through objective truths like 2 + 2 = 4. You know, such and such happened on this date. Those things are true and they are meaningful, and we need them to be true. We build things around their being true, but that is not how you engage life when it comes to making decisions in the moment. Instead, you use subjective truths like your values, and those are far more meaningful. Much of your life is from instincts and passions and decisiveness, and that's not something that's really calculated with 2 + 2 = 4 type truths, but rather it uses your subjective truths, such as your values. One of the big ones he talked about, as I'm getting some raindrops on my visor, is your death. And contemplation of your own death is a way to drive you to living a meaningful life. Being real about that. There is one day where you're not going to exist like you have been every day of your life, and the remaining days of your life, but that will cease. So what do you do about that? How do you live now in light of the fact that this is temporary? Life is transient. And Kierkegaard also spoke about a kind of loneliness, a metaphysical loneliness you have whenever you really discover your true values that animate you and make you different and make you what you are. That is very often, if not always, going to be different from the crowd. And so you can't really relate to the crowd. They can't relate to you. It's near impossible to describe to them this internal angst you have about your own death or about how your values drive you. I'm going to ride through some serious rain here. I have a mesh jacket on so I can feel it on my skin. Oh boy. I'm on the single stretch of 46 where there's no civilization for about 10-15 minutes. So I don't know where to get any shelter. But we'll press on. So there's not even words to express these deep subjective values that are really ultimately significant for your life. Anybody can talk about 2 + 2 = 4 and objective truths, and we can debate things, but people could think you're crazy if they really knew what motivated you. They just wouldn't understand, and that's okay. That's the way it has to be. And you still have to hold your world together. You're alone with your God, and you're acting as a knight of faith, he said. living with decisiveness, with passion, with your values, aware of your temporary life. Soren Kierkegaard is famous for this story he told about Abraham and Isaac from the Old Testament. And he titled this essay a very boring title, but if you understand what the words mean, then you understand why he titled it that. The teleological suspension of the ethical. He understood that at least the Christian view of life was that you are to live by God's commands. That's the ethical. But is there anything that could, at least temporarily, suspend that ethical norm? Does anything trump over that? And he argued, and some people think this is a butchered rendering of this account of Abraham and Isaac, but if you recall, God told Abraham to sacrifice his only son. Now, the ethical commands of God also said don't murder. So what's greater? This temporary teleological, this goal-oriented duty to obey, in this case, God's injunction, what he thought was God's injunction, that contradicted the ethical norms. So he goes to raise the sword or the knife to sacrifice his own son, suspending the ethical temporarily for this teleological obedience. And God sees his faith and stops him. And that is crucial that's a crucial story, an analogy that he uses to this idea of living by your subjective truths, you alone with your God, being authentic to those views. The night of faith. If you think about it, some of the most important and biggest things that you've done in your life were not decided by rationality and objective truths, but something like what Kierkegaard is talking about, something subjective, something that involves decisiveness and passion. Think about falling in love. Is that really rational? I've been in love. It's great. I'm still married, 23 years this August. But I didn't sit down at the table and weigh all my options and say, should I fall in love here? Should I fall in love there? Should I fall in love with her? This date? You just fall. It's not irrational, but it's certainly extra rational. Do not turn, buddy. And it's very important. The world doesn't go around. The world does not go around without love. Okay, this is a pretty good rain right here. I'm going 60 miles an hour. I'm not crazy about it. I did everything right this morning, but check the forecast. I think we all know that a lot of ugliness in the world is motivated not by objective truths, but by subjective passions and stuff. So there's that too. But that just proves the point that ultimately what drives us is something more important than raw facts. I had a 1 hour rain delay at McDonald's. So Kierkegaard, man, he's saying that the most important decisions in life are not made by questions like how many miles is it to the moon, objective truths. The most important decisions in your life are your subjective truths. What are you willing to die for? What are you willing to sacrifice for? What convictions really define you? How does your existence align with those convictions? Do you have beliefs that you espouse, but they don't really inform how you live your life? That's the question. You might want to be honest with yourself, and that's what Kierkegaard does. He implores you to discover those values that are yours. the ones that really define you. What are you doing today that only makes sense if your values are true? Maybe do that thing. The earlier questions are really good. What are the key things that you hold? Like if someone said, "Who are you? What defines you?" There may be a public and a private side to you. What would you say? This is who I really am, and then ask yourself, does that really impact your life? Or is there something else that impacts your life? Is there something else that really, if I knew this about you, I would say, oh, that makes sense. What is that? It may not be, you might tell people, well, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, I'm a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, I'm an American, I'm a patriot. But would someone be able to observe you and say, oh, that makes sense? Or would they say, no, there's something else? Well, thanks for riding along today, guys. I'm going to sign off here. I hope the video was clear despite the rain. I hope you've benefited from some of Kierkegaard's observations. Soren Kierkegaard, by the way, he was Danish. Not that it matters, but just so you know where he was from that country where Danish people are born. Danishmark. Danville.